It was just after 6 a.m. someone banged on a metal door. Another voice shouted back. A plastic bucket fell and rolled across the corridor, spilling water that mixed with dust and turned the floor muddy. Then came the sound everyone in that compound feared the most, Mama Eniola's voice, loud, sharp, shaking with anger. "Open this door now. Do you think this house is charity?" Tenants froze in their rooms. Curtains shifted slightly. Someone held their breath. In room 4, Tunde sat on the edge of his mattress, his phone pressed to his ear, pretending to be on a call that had already ended. His heart beat faster than the ceiling fan above him. He had heard this voice too many times. This was how mornings began in that compound. Ibadan was waking up outside, buses honking, hawkers shouting bread and akara, but inside that fenced compound, fear had its own routine. Mama Eniola paced the corridor, her slippers slapping hard against the concrete. She banged again, louder this time. "I said open this door. You people think I don't know what I'm doing?" No one moved. Tunde swallowed hard. He hadn't slept well. The smell of last night's instant noodles still hung in his room. His rent was overdue by 2 months. The job he once relied on disappeared quietly after the company downsized. Every day since then felt like a slow fall he couldn't stop. Mama Eniola was not always like this, people said. Years ago, she was known as a firm but reasonable landlady. But something had changed. Maybe it was debt. Maybe it was bitterness. Maybe it was the belief that suffering gave her the right to make others suffer too. Whatever it was, it showed in her eyes now, eyes that scanned doors like enemies. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, we'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The compound itself was ordinary. 8 small rooms. 1 narrow kitchen. 1 bathroom everyone shared. Cracked walls stained by years of rain. At night, mosquitoes sang endlessly. In the afternoons, the heat trapped everything inside, smells, voices, anger. Arguments were no longer shocking here. They were expected. By mid-morning, Mama Eniola had moved on to another tenant. Her voice echoed again, this time mixed with insults. Tunde shut his door slowly and leaned against it. His chest felt tight. He remembered when he first moved in, hopeful, proud to finally have his own space. That hope now felt distant. In the kitchen later that day, Kemi stood stirring Gary, her hands shaking slightly. She was younger than most tenants, always polite, always quiet. She avoided trouble the way people avoid broken glass. When Tunde entered, she gave him a small tired smile. "She started again this morning," Kemi said softly, not looking up. Tunde nodded. "She always does." They stood in silence, listening to the sound of water dripping from a leaking tap. The smell of kerosene lingered. Outside, Mama Eniola's door slammed shut. "This place is changing us," Kemi whispered. "I don't like who I'm becoming here." Tunde didn't answer. He felt the same but didn't know how to say it out loud. Weeks passed like this. Arguments. Threats. Notices written in red marker and pasted on the wall. Pay or pack out. Sometimes Mama Eniola accused tenants of stealing light. Other times, she accused them of disrespect. Every accusation came with shouting. Every shouting came with fear. At night, Tunde lay awake listening to footsteps, wondering if his door would be the next one banged on. He replayed old memories, his mother's voice, the smell of home-cooked food, days when rent was not something that stole sleep. One evening, rain poured heavily. Water leaked through the roof in thin lines. Tenants placed buckets around their rooms. Mama Eniola stood in the corridor, yelling that repairs were not her responsibility. "This house didn't break itself," she shouted. "If you can't cope, leave." Something shifted that night. Not loudly. Not visibly. But inside the people who lived there. Fear began to mix with anger. Kemi sat on her bed, staring at the wall. Tunde watched the rain from his doorway, his jaw clenched. Everyone was still trying to survive quietly, hoping tomorrow would be better. But deep down, a question lingered in every room that night. How long can a person endure before they break? And if this was happening to you, if the place meant to shelter you became a source of daily fear, what would you do? Would you stay silent? Would you fight back? Or would you leave everything behind just to breathe again? This was only the beginning. 6 months later, the compound no longer felt like a place people lived. It felt like a place people endured. The air itself seemed heavier. Conversations were shorter. Laughter had disappeared. Even the radio in the nearby kiosk that once played Fuji music every evening now sounded distant, like it belonged to another world. Tunde noticed it most at night, when silence pressed against his ears and sleep refused to come. He was still unemployed. Every morning, he woke up early, washed his face with cold water, and left the compound with his CV folded inside a nylon. By evening, he returned tired, dusty, and empty-handed. Each day he delayed coming home because he knew what awaited him. Mama Eniola's eyes. Her words. Her reminders. "You people are enjoying my house for free," she would shout. "Do you think I built this place with jokes?" The rent notice on the wall had been rewritten. This time, the amount was higher. No explanation. No meeting. Just a number that didn't make sense. That was the day something snapped in Kemi. She had just returned from work, her shoes wet from rain, her wrapper splashed with mud. She stood in front of the notice for a long time, reading it again and again, as if hoping the numbers would rearrange themselves. "This must be a mistake," she said aloud. Mama Eniola heard her. The door to the landlady's room opened sharply. "What mistake?" she asked. "Are you the one that owns this house?" Tenants paused mid-step. Someone slowly closed their door. Kemi's voice trembled. "Madam, you increased rent without telling anyone. We are struggling." Mama Eniola laughed, a short dry sound. "Struggling is not my problem." That evening, the argument spilled into the corridor. Voices rose. Hands gestured. Accusations flew back and forth like stones. Tunde stood at the edge, his chest tight, watching Kemi try to explain, trying to calm the situation. "We are human beings," Kemi said. "We just want understanding." Something about that sentence changed Mama Eniola's face. "Don't talk to me like that," she shouted, stepping forward. Before anyone could react, she grabbed Kemi by the arm. The corridor erupted. "Leave her," someone yelled. "Madam, calm down," another voice begged. Tunde moved forward instinctively. His heart pounded. He reached out, trying to separate them. But chaos doesn't listen to reason. Someone slipped on the wet floor. Someone else pushed back. The sound of a head hitting concrete echoed louder than the shouting. Then silence. Kemi lay on the ground, her eyes half open, her chest rising unevenly. Blood mixed with rainwater beneath her head. For a moment, nobody moved. "Mama," someone whispered. Kemi didn't answer. Tunde knelt beside her, his hands shaking. "Kemi, please. Breathe. Please." Her breaths became shallow. Her lips trembled. Then they stopped. A scream tore through the compound, raw and broken. Neighbors rushed in. Someone called for help. Another person shouted for an ambulance. Mama Eniola stood frozen, her mouth open, her hands trembling, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Sirens arrived too late. The police followed. That night, Mama Eniola and a man who had stepped in during the fight were taken away. Handcuffs clicked softly in the darkness. The compound watched in silence as flashing lights painted the walls red and blue. By morning, the news had spread. Kemi was gone. Her room remained locked. Her slippers sat by the door. Her phone buzzed unanswered. 3 days later, her family arrived. Her mother collapsed when she saw the room. Her brother stood quietly, his eyes hollow. A small memorial was held under the mango tree at the front of the compound. Candles flickered. People cried. Some blamed Mama Eniola. Some blamed the system. Some blamed themselves for not stopping it earlier. Tunde couldn't sleep. He replayed the moment again and again. What if he had stepped in faster? What if they had all spoken up earlier? What if silence hadn't lasted so long? The compound changed after that. Police tape was removed, but the fear stayed. Rooms emptied one by one. Tenants packed quietly. Nobody argued anymore. Mama Eniola's room remained locked. Her voice was gone, but its echo lingered. If this was you, struggling, unheard, living under pressure, would you have spoken up sooner? Would you have stayed silent like many did? Or would you have walked away before anger turned fatal? Tell us in the comments how this part made you feel. And if you're new here, remember to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because the story didn't end with the arrest. That was only the turning point. 1 year later, the compound looked the same from the outside, but everything inside it had changed. The paint was still peeling. The mango tree still dropped ripe fruits that no one picked. But the noise was gone. No shouting. No slamming doors. No footsteps pacing the corridor at dawn. Silence had settled into the walls like dust. Mama Eniola never returned. Her case moved slowly, the way cases often do. Court dates were postponed. Files changed hands. What remained constant was the absence she left behind and the weight of what had happened. People in the neighborhood spoke about her in low voices, not with satisfaction, but with a strange sadness. A woman who once rented rooms to survive had lost everything to anger she didn't know how to control. Tunde had moved out 3 months after Kemi's burial. On his last night in the compound, he sat on the bare floor of his room, surrounded by packed bags. The fan hummed weakly. He stared at the crack in the wall above his bed and remembered Kemi's voice in the kitchen. Her small smile. The way she always tried to make peace. He whispered, "I'm sorry," though no one was there to hear him. Life didn't suddenly become easy for Tunde. He stayed with a friend for a while. He took short jobs. Some days he ate once. Some days not at all. But something inside him had shifted. He spoke up more. He walked away from places that felt unsafe. He no longer ignored warning signs. 6 months later, he found steady work. On his first payday, he bought food and shared it with the people he lived with. That night, as they laughed and ate together, Tunde felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: relief. Kemi's family visited the compound once more before it was eventually sold. Her mother stood under the mango tree, touching the trunk gently. "She used to sit here," she said quietly. She said it made her feel calm. The family planted flowers beside the tree before leaving. No speeches. No anger. Just a quiet goodbye. People often think stories like this end with justice neatly wrapped up. But real life doesn't work that way. Justice came slowly, imperfectly. healing came even slower. Some tenants still blamed themselves. Others learned hard lessons about silence, power, and fear. The compound eventually filled again with new tenants who didn't know the full story. But those who were there would never forget. And maybe that's the point. Because this isn't just about an evil landlady or a tragic fight. It's about what happens when people feel unheard for too long. It's about how pressure, when ignored, can push ordinary people into moments they can never undo. If this was you, living in that compound, hearing those arguments every morning, what would you have done differently? Would you have spoken up sooner? Would you have left earlier? Or would fear have kept you silent too? We want you to sit with that question. Because homes are supposed to be places of safety. And when they stop being that, the cost is more than money. Sometimes, it's life itself. Let us know in the comments how this story made you feel. Did you relate to Tunde? Did Kemi's story remind you of someone you know, or maybe yourself? And before we end, tell us where you're watching from. We truly want to hear from you. If you're new here, don't forget to click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Some stories stay with you not because they are loud, but because they are real. This is one of them.